So, Ollie, welcome to the Everymind podcast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, Paul. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Yeah, we were just saying how I can't believe it's March, wasn't it? It just goes ridiculously quick with everything, even so much going on. But how's this? I'd say this year, the last 12 months. How's the last 12 months been for you, especially as a CEO of Magnus as well? How's the last 12 months been?
It's entertaining, challenging. It's been pretty hard. Well, it's been very hard work, to be honest. I mean, nobody envisaged 12 months ago where we would be, where the last year would have gone. And it's kind of had a big effect on everyone, really. It's just been we've been busy. It's a good time to be in warehousing and transport, but this time last year we weren't sure what was coming.
Mm.
There was a concern of warehouses all being shut down, but with the whole industry shutting down, warehouses became overcrowded. And fortunately, I had just taken on a new warehouse, so I had a bit of space and yeah, a lot of hard work, but it's been emotional, that's for sure.
Yeah, so you almost say business has got busier during these more
Yeah,
difficult times.
yeah, it's definitely got busier, but there's that fine line between being busy fools and being good busy. But I would say from March until probably the end of the year, we've been busy fools a little bit.
Mhm.
Start of this year, we've started to get the right processes and things in place because I mean, I came here in 2019 in July, and I think we've certainly doubled the turnover and it was, it's not a small turnover, but we've just we've just been pretty successful at what we did. But because of that, you can sometimes grow too quickly, and if you don't have the right processes and procedures in place, then there's a lot of catching up to do. So,
Yeah, yeah, I can relate to that. How many employees do you currently have within the business?
so it's about 130.
130, and has that grown as well? Obviously, during.
Yeah, no, it was just over 100 when I came here. So we took on a new unit next door, new warehouse units that doubled the size of the warehousing. Obviously, we had to man up accordingly. Drivers wise, we're probably a few more, but warehouse and the office, and then we started this freight forwarding department down in Felixstowe. So there's another 8 people there. So yeah, we've got a few more people now. So
Nice. And a few more people means more I guess management from you and more, I wouldn't say pressure, but more obviously responsibility as well. So obviously a lot of the work we do is working with businesses and kind of seeing how they've supported their employees during these difficult times. And I guess within your industry, it's kind of been all systems go still. So how do you find almost that responsibility for those 100 odd people at the moment?
uh, yeah, it's difficult, but when I came here, I kind of built from the top down. So I bought departmental heads of department. So bought a head of warehousing, a head of transport, and a head of freight, and they kind of they manage their staff. So I kind of don't get too involved in the day-to-day managing of all the staff. That's for sure, because we have a proper structure here. But I brought my sister in the middle of last year to head up the HR department,
Mhm.
and she's been brilliant. So she tends to take over that role more than I do. So yeah, she's better at that, I would say, than me. She has enough on her hands looking after me.
But from what I've kind of seen as well, on LinkedIn and that, you do share very openly about your mental health, your personal sort of journey as well. So obviously myself included, I'm a big advocate for
Yeah.
sharing my own journey, and I lost my dad to suicide, and I talk very openly about that and my own journey as a man dealing with my mental health and emotions. And I think as a founder, a CEO, that does have an impact on my team. But there are some times when I question, am I being too open? So have you always been quite open, or is it just something you've been doing?
No, is the answer. I can't kind of so my dad died in 2018, and probably since then I've become a lot more open. And then I took on this business probably it was just over a year later, and just kind of, I don't know, felt a little bit freer, but I was in a position where I was talking about something that I was told you shouldn't talk about, but actually I think it, from, I'm not a big one on positions, we're all the same, but yes, I've got bigger responsibilities here, but actually coming from someone like me, it turns out has helped a lot of people, because there is this, there's always been the taboo of mental health and all that sort of thing, and people, guys don't talk about it, and everybody suffers from it in their own sort of way. And actually, I thought, you know what, well, why not be honest about it, and use my position to hopefully try and help others. I never thought, to be honest, it would go quite as it has, but I'm proud of that. The way, I'm not ashamed of anything I've said or done, and if I'm that sort of person, I'd always try and help people if I can, and if I'm saying something that helps other people, then that's got to be a good thing, surely.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just from kind of the work that we've done, if you do have that CEO or that senior leader that's quite vulnerable and open, it does encourage others to be vulnerable too, doesn't it? And I think especially as men in particular, we don't really talk about mental health and emotions. And if you've got guys that you can relate to that are talking about their mental health and emotions, it does make you feel a little bit more comfortable to do so, because you kind of touched on it a minute ago, but do you think there's still obviously a stigma that surrounds mental health in general?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I first started, I've got friends that I wouldn't say they have criticized me in the past for the things I've put on LinkedIn. I don't think people really do now, because it's got past that stage of, it was kind of, Ollie, what are you doing, sort of thing. And I think you get to a stage where actually it's gone past that, and people just accept it now. But people don't talk about it enough. It just, I feel a bit of release from it. There's, how do you quantify what's mental health and what's not? It's, as I said earlier, I think we all suffer from it in certain ways, but I've got a couple of friends that have suffered from it really badly and very openly, and to be honest, they're the people who understand it more than other people. I have friends who openly say, don't get all that. I was brought up in the army and don't believe all that sort of rubbish. But then there's other people who completely empathise and understand it. I think it's just all that bravado, and we just have to pull back that bravado of you just don't talk about things like that. The more we talk, the easier it is.
Yeah, and I think I've spoken to lots of people like that, and I can relate to what you're saying. It's almost, and I think I was the same up into a certain period, where you almost feel like you're bulletproof. It's almost like you have to have this, maybe internally you don't feel bulletproof, but that almost, bravado, as you say, that I'm bulletproof, I can handle this, I've been through this and I can handle anything. But I've spoken to many guys that thought they were bulletproof, but they just burnt out at a certain period, or potentially they were like running away from an issue and putting on that sort of brave face, and then all of a sudden that comes and sort of takes over them at an eventual point. So it's people like you that, as you say, that are out there opening up and sharing your own journey, that I think will inspire a lot more others to do so as well. It'd be good to find out, because I think a lot of potential people want to share their story, but they're very hesitant to do so for the reasons you've just stated, but equally, not knowing the right way or the best way of doing it. So what was the kind of turning point for you to start being a bit more vocal about it?
I guess being in this position of, I ran my own business before with someone else, but now I'm the head of this business here. And it's a good question. I don't really know. I kind of just ended up doing that. And, I did this man post on LinkedIn that ended up reaching about 1.3 million people or something. And that was just a story of my life. And, and there was no preconceived plan on doing that. It just came out, and the reason it's just come out is because that was just a form of release for me. Clearly, I hadn't driven in thinking I was going to do that in the morning, but I felt a lot better for it. I had an accident in 1997, and it's always been tough. I fell off a balcony. I was 40 foot high. I was in intensive care for 13 weeks, had to teach myself to walk again. But for the next however many years, it's 24 years now, so let's say 23 years, kind of walked around with a mask on that I was all right, because we're all big boys, aren't we? And you do that, and actually I look at it now and it affected me a lot more than I ever realized at the time, because I have a greater understanding of it, but I kind of brushed it under the carpet. Since then I've had other things where my heart was stopping, and I had a business relationship that I found tough, shall we say. Actually, when I left that, I found that really tough. So I've had a lot of things, but I've always just brushed it under the carpet. We talk about counselling. I did that for 4 months, and it just didn't work for me. And the reason it probably didn't work is because I didn't understand it myself. I just brushed things aside. And exactly as you said earlier, it's about being bulletproof, isn't it? We all think we're bulletproof. I survived that fall, so in a way I was pretty invincible. But mentally, physically, I've recovered from it. I mean, I broke my back in 5 different places, and very lucky to survive. But the bigger effect it had on me was mentally rather than physically. But people only ever saw the physical side of it. I didn't understand the mental side of it, probably until recently. Other things have triggered me looking back in the past and understanding it myself.
Yeah, you've been through a lot, right? And I think sometimes that adversity leads to resilience as well, right? You've kind of been through those experiences and kind of got out the other side. But I think one thing you mentioned that I could really relate to then was that, like you said, that mask that you wore, and just kind of the exhaustion that comes with wearing that mask. And I talk about my mask quite a lot when I was kind of, as you say, not talking to anyone about what I was going through, kind of dealing with it on my own. And I always say, like, I wish I would have took that mask off. But actually, it's fine saying that now. Back then, as you said, I didn't know I was doing that. I was just doing what I was almost conditioned and educated to do with the right tools that I had. And that was just get on with it, just crack on. And did you find when you was a bit more open about it, it was almost a bit more freeing, like that exhaustion wasn't as much?
Yeah, 100%. However, I've been more open about it in writing rather than talking about it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's easier to write things down than to talk about it. I've always found, and then suddenly LinkedIn again, 100%. There was no idea that I was going to do that. I didn't have a plan. It just happened. I'd been quite honest before I wrote this man post. But could I go and sit and talk about it as easily as I could to write it down? No, probably. So I haven't dealt with everything I should have done, but putting it down in writing has made things easier for me, for sure. Yeah. I mean, could I have had this conversation 2 years ago? Probably not, to be honest.
Yeah. It's a really good point though as well, because lots of people are hesitant to do anything, like to share anything, because they don't know how. But I believe anyone within a business or outside of a business can, as you say, write and publish something. It could be, you know, for a CEO to stand up potentially in a team meeting of 100 people and say, this is what I've been through. It's a very difficult situation for anyone to be in. But like you've said, potentially getting someone to just write a couple of paragraphs about something they've experienced and sharing that with the team is sometimes a little bit easier. And my journey was the same, Ollie, like you said. I mean, I always joke, so I didn't tell anyone for 4 years. Then I started to tell my family and friends after I went to therapy. And then, you know, I started writing about it like 8 years later, and I can stand up in front of an audience now and talk more openly about it. And people ask how, and it took me a huge amount of time, like you say, to even write it down on a blog post or whatever it was. So I think anyone has, like you say, the ability to almost start. You also, I was seeing some of your posts as well around imposter syndrome, and I think, you know, again, as a sort of, you know, CEO and however you want to kind of position it, not many CEOs will talk about imposter syndrome. So, you know, can you kind of talk a little bit about that, and how do you kind of manage that?
Yeah, I've always had that feeling, I guess. I put a post on the other day about, it's a bit like when I used to play sport and I was half decent at cricket, I was the half decent footballer, etc. But I always had this feeling that I wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I would play, you know, if I wasn't good enough, I wouldn't be picked. Make no mistake. But I always thought other people were better than me, and that was just always that. I was always better if I played in a worse team where I was the best player, and I knew I was the best player.
Yeah.
If I was in a team where I was one of the better players, but I wasn't the best player, best one or two players, it would actually be quite bad for my confidence in a way. You know, I was quite a nervous, certainly a nervous cricketer. I always thought I'd always go out thinking I was going to get nothing, and I did sometimes. But you know, I was 100% good enough, but I never had that. You know, I've suffered from lack of confidence for years, probably more so in the last, probably as an adult. Actually, at school, I was okay. I think the accident in '97 kind of ruined my confidence totally. You know, I lost five stone, I think, trying to teach yourself to walk again, and it's difficult. And not being confident is such a, you know, I bang on about it all the time now, about backing yourself and having confidence in your own ability. Because if you don't believe in yourself, then nobody's going to believe in you, and that goes from sport to business. And I went into a business with my confidence at I wouldn't say an all-time low. That's not fair, but it wasn't where it needed to be. And with hindsight, it wasn't the right choice for me. It turned into a successful business, but for me personally, mentally, it wasn't the right thing to do. And imposter syndrome, I did always feel I was in a position that I wasn't good enough to be in. And then I left there, you know, there was kind of a fallout. So I left there with my confidence very, I would say, at an all-time low. And then I've come into this business where we talk about masks. I've had to come in as not pretending to be something I'm not, because that wouldn't be right. But, you know, trying to have a self-belief and a confidence in myself that, to be honest, I didn't really have at the time. But I'm so much better now than I was there. But I always still have this, am I good enough feeling. You know, people tell me all the time that I am good enough. So I can only take their word for it. But I'm not the sort of person to go around telling people that I am the best and I am all this. You know, I run this business. We've been pretty successful at it, but I know full well that I've played my part hugely in it, but I'm reliant on my team. Mm-hmm. You know, my team are integral to the success of this business, and I'm a big team player. But sitting here, I feel I warrant my place in the team. Have I felt that in the past? Probably not. No.
Mm. It's interesting. Again, something I can relate. Do how did you kind of start to build that confidence? Because again, when I think about confidence, it's almost like you say a muscle and you have to kind of work at it. It isn't something that just kind of happens overnight. But has it just been, and again, you spoke about like doubling turnover since you've come in, and that's like a massive, it's right there in front of you on a piece of paper, right? But still you kind of feel like that's not you and you're kind of not worthy of that. So is there stuff that you work on, or is it just naturally as you start to be a little bit more successful, you start to feel a bit more confident?
I think, yeah, I think it, as I said, it was a real tough thing for me. I made myself confident because I had to. I couldn't come in here without bluster and bravado, and this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And that was the hardest bit. And then it started to, the ball started to roll down the hill, if you like, of actually, I am pretty good at this. I can do this. I've had years of, these guys that I've brought in, they used to be suppliers of mine in my previous business. And, there's confidence in there that they, it's a huge confidence boost for me that these guys chose to come and work for me. That all of them could have done something else, but they believed in me. But the biggest thing I've done is underestimate myself over the years. I still do underestimate myself. I'm very self-detrimental. I work with somebody who helps me on certain bits, and she's always going on about me underestimating myself. It's just my natural demeanor, or what's the right word? It's just the way I am. I'll always put myself down and big others up, and I have to learn to change that at some stage. But I am who I am. It's a difficult thing, but naturally my confidence has increased as the business has got more successful. So.
Would you, I know you said you lost a lot of confidence after the accident, but would you say you was confident as a child? I know you mentioned about sport, but like if you can think all the way back, was you quite a confident child?
Yeah. So I went to the local primary school until I was 8 years old. Then I went to private school. Now I loved my school. It was brilliant, but an unbelievably competitive environment to be in, which is good on one hand, but it's not good on another. You get eaten alive if you're not the person that you want to be. If you're not good at sport, or you're not this, or you're not one of the I'm sure others. I can only speak for the schools that I went to, but it was very, very, very competitive. And when we left school. So it was at Ipswich, and I'm still around here. I'm surrounded by a lot of people who went to the school, and in business, it's become very competitive. Everybody's not trying to be better than others, but sometimes it's not healthy. And if you do have a slight, if you do have a slight confidence issue, then. Sorry, that's my daughter.
It's why these are uncut and raw. My phone went off, your phone went off.
Yeah. If you do have a slight confidence issue, then it's detrimental to you. And business is a similar environment in a competitive world, and I wouldn't say I'm really competitive on certain things, but in a business world, I'm not so competitive. It's not about money for me. It's about creating something that makes me proud of myself.
Yeah.
Rather than what car I'm driving or anything like that. It's more for my own self-belief and confidence. That's the thing that drives me more. There's nothing better than, or there's nothing worse than looking at yourself in the mirror thinking that you're not very good. But there's also something nice about looking in the mirror and you like what you see. And to be honest, for far too many years, I looked in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think, this podcast is typically sort of, HR professionals will listen to it, or people with an interest in sort of mental health in the workplace. And I hear from a lot of HR professionals that say they really struggle with imposter syndrome as well. And I think it's just important that, as you say, your honesty of that is massively important, because again, I think when you feel like an imposter or you lack self-belief and no one else is talking about that, you do feel less worthy, don't you? You feel like, again, you're the only one kind of experiencing that low self-belief. And I think social media, sometimes makes that a little bit more difficult. But if you have that self-belief and confidence, and you're open about those times where you don't feel confident, I think that has a massive impact on your own self, but also equally the people around you. And I know that you've spoken about this before as well, but what do you think the relationship is between the health of your business and you as the CEO driving this, the commercial realities of making money and all of that, and the health of your employees? Like, do you see there's being a real importance in investing in the people in your business to almost have a big impact on your business in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm only the guy who sits. I'm only the stupid one who's put the money in and runs the business. This business is only as good as the 129 other people that work here. One thing I like to think I've changed is the atmosphere here. The team. I said earlier, I'm very much a team person. There was no bonding here. There was no family feel to the business because it had lost its identity. One thing I tried to do was, bring an identity back to the business and get people wanting to feel part of the business. And to do that, you have to value them. I would say they didn't feel valued before. Do they now? It's not for me to answer that question. But I think they I think they do, because certain people tell me the atmosphere here is so much better. But it's about bigging people up. Or not bigging people up, but you talk about self-belief. If you surround yourself with the wrong people who go back to school and where you can get eaten alive, if you surround yourself with people that are telling you don't want people to just be telling you you're brilliant if you're not. It's not about feeding your ego. But on the flip side of it, you don't want people who are very detrimental to you, because it's dangerous, and you can mentally hurt people doing that. And I recognize that, and I try to, I always try and big up my team as part of the team, because I do recognize how important they are to this business, but also because it's the right thing to do. I won't big people up if they're not doing a good job. But everybody, I don't care whether you're 13 or you're 47, everybody wants a pat on the back or a well done when I came here 18 months ago, and I sent an email once just to say well done to the guys who've done something, and one of them said to me, that's the first time anyone's done that for about 10 years. But for me, that's just a simple, I didn't think, I'm going to do that because suddenly they'll think I'm great. It's just a well done. I've got a 14-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter. I try and praise them, but I don't give it if they don't deserve it. We're all the same. We're all big kids at the end of the day who like to be praised, and it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything to be nice. I'm always saying about be nice to people. I don't understand why people can't just be nice to each other. What's the downside? Yeah,
I love that. And again, I think a lot of companies have made the mistake in investing money in products and initiatives and all of that, when actually any business can do what you've just said that you've done, right? Any business, any manager can send out an email to people and say, well done, really appreciate, your support and all of that, and how much of an impact that can have on the general culture of the business and the people within the business too. And like you said, it doesn't cost anything, right? It just comes from the right place. And equally, I think employees, if they feel valued, and there's lots of research around this, they will give as much as they can possibly give for the business. If they don't feel valued, then they're not going to, right? And it's, employees are smarter than I think companies think sometimes, and they know when they're just trying to say they're doing this because they have to say it, or if it comes from the right place, like you've just said, that comes from you just being a kind leader, and they can kind of see through that. Like, as you say, we're all big kids at the end of the day.
Yeah, but life is also much about respect and trust, isn't it? My door is always open. I had somebody who came and did a video with me here, and we walk around the warehouse, and everyone's saying hello to me, and because I speak to them, again, just because I'm sitting in this office, it doesn't mean I'm any different to them. I want to be friends with them. I want them to be able to come and knock on my door, not for pay rises every 5 minutes. There's a line, but if somebody's got a problem, I want to be that one of these people. I've got an open door policy here. It annoys me when my door is open and people knock on it. So it's just about creating a team of people that are all, it's very, very easy to row a boat if you're all going in the same direction, isn't it? We're in the last 7, 8, 9 months, we've had some people leave, but they weren't rowing in the same direction. You shake the tree, the best apples stay on, don't they? And it's a very different life here now than it was before I came in, because we've got so much busier, and it's not such an easy life, but you get more out of it if you throw yourself into it, and most importantly, you're appreciated.
Yeah,
you hit the nail on the head. Where people do more if they're appreciated. Back to what I said, a little pat on the head, and it's not false. Hopefully people don't think I'm false in any way. I genuinely, I appreciate what these guys do, and hopefully vice versa.
Yeah, and I think it's like you say, that reminder of you're just doing your best as well.
Yeah.
As it's mental health is so individual, and motivation is so individual, and you're never going to please everyone. But as long as you're just doing your best and it's with the right intent, then the business is going to grow from that as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually bumped into one of the warehouse guys the other day, and he thanked me for what I'd been putting on LinkedIn and how a person in my position had opened up, and it said it helped him enormously. I think I started blushing. I was just like, I just didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to say, and I just thanked him. But the fact that I'm having that impact on people who work for me means a hell of a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just I mean, we're going to wrap up anyway because conscious of time, but just the impact that what I've realized from me sharing my story as well is not only you impacting him, you're impacting his family, you're impacting his friends, you're impacting his close colleagues, and and that comes from, like you said, just you being honest, being vulnerable, sharing some stuff on LinkedIn, right, and just coming at it from the right intent, and the impact that you are having by doing that is huge. So I just want to obviously say thank you. I think it's always encouraging to meet people like you that are kind of are trying to inspire others. So it's something that we try and get more companies to do and more companies to buy into. So kind of definitely appreciate that. I want to ask you one last question though, if you don't mind, Olly, and it's a big question, and I always hate getting asked this question, but I'm going to ask you. What advice would you give to the younger you? Let's say the 10-year-old you.
The 10-year-old me. I was quite a cocky 10-year-old. I would always say, believe in yourself and back yourself. Because as I said earlier, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. I spent far too long not believing or backing myself. I'm 47 years old. I'd probably say I've wasted 25 years by not believing in myself. Do I genuinely believe in myself now? A lot more than I did, that's for sure. But there's a fine line between believing in yourself and being cocky.
Mm.
Nobody likes someone who's cocky. But if you believe in yourself and just be a nice person, you know, my mum said to me, be nice to everyone on the way up because you may well need them on the way down. And I said earlier, I don't see any downside to just being a nice, genuine person. But most importantly, believe in yourself. So.
Love that. Thank you, Ollie. Where can people find you? I guess LinkedIn's the best place, right?
Yeah, I got asked this the other day, and I have no idea what my LinkedIn profile is. But yeah, Olly Olly Magnus, and it's on there. Is probably the best place.
You realize you're an influencer now. You got to get on all of them.
Do you know how that embarrasses me so much? Honestly, it's like when you say I went out to inspire people, and it was never something I planned to do. But it's great, you know. I love the fact that people say I inspire them. I don't get it, if I'm honest. I don't understand it. But yeah, influencer, I don't like that. That embarrasses me.
No, tell me about it. I don't either. But equally, you know, talking about inspiring people, I think the reason why you inspire people is because you never set out to inspire people. Like, you know, the same with me. I only wanted to help one person with that blog post that I wrote originally, and then that's just escalated into more. You know, I think the people that get into this because they want to get into it, or they might see a job out of it, are very different to the people like you that have just done it because you wanted to potentially, you know, someone from it.
Well, I think it's authenticity, isn't it?
Yeah.
And being a nice person. I guess, rightly or wrongly, I've come across as a nice person who's authentic, and people can see through people who aren't authentic. And I was just myself. I still am just myself. I will always be myself. I will always be me. And if people like that, then that's brilliant.
Thanks, Ollie. I really appreciate you being so honest today.
Yeah, no, thanks, Paul. Thanks for your time.